In today's show, the Blazers proved that winning ugly can still be beautiful as they knock off the Spurs in a game they had to come back late to win it. Plus, a big boost from the Shack of Troutdale. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richman. Listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen every day, 5 days a week, free on all platforms, coming at you every single weekday, the only daily Trailblazers podcast. So why don't you start your day with Locked On Blazers, make it a part of your daily routine. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. Today's show, we're talking about a Blazers win. They come back and then hold off the Spurs in the closing seconds to win 117-110. I want to talk about this game. We'll do what we do with the fastest recap in the West. I want to talk about the importance of winning ugly. The Blazers did not play well in this game, and they got a win, and I think there's something to be celebrated there. And then a listener asked a question about the magical 20-game mark, when everyone across the league says that's when things count. And the Blazers now 14 games in with 6 left. Before we get to that 14-game mark, I want to look back at historical 20-game marks and what it has portended for Blazer teams of the past, and as we look ahead to the next 6 games on the Blazers schedule. But first, as promised, let's do what we do, the fastest recap in the West. Blazers led this game 30-29 after one. Shaedon Sharpe had 10 points in the first quarter. Shaedon Sharpe comes off the bench and he's just so smooth and so fun. Jeremy Grant added 9, Blazers up by 1. Portland, after falling behind in that second quarter and looking rough, one of the worst second quarter teams in the league so far this season, Portland pulls back and leads by 6 at the break. The Spurs aren't very good, and the Blazers made sure that they had a little comfortable lead, although they weren't playing much defense at all. 62-56 at the break, and Portland holds on to a 93-89 lead after 3 quarters. Again, no big separation, no big run. The Blazers had not played well. Neither team really could stop the other one from scoring through the first 3 quarters, but Portland struggled to open the fourth. They were bad, and they all of a sudden found themselves down 106-100 with 6 minutes and 50 seconds remaining. There's a stoppage. They go to the break, down 6. They've won a lot of close games this year. They're better than the Spurs, who lost by 37 points last night in San Francisco. Can they find a way? Yes, they can find a way. The Blazers close the game on a 17-4 run and win this one going away 117-110. Portland led by Jeremy Grant, 29 points. Anthony Simons had 23. Jeremy Grant hit another 6 3-pointers in this game. He's been really good. Anthony Simons, after a slow start, shook it off and made his shots when they made his shots late in this one. After starting the game 0 for 5, he finished 7 of 16 from the floor and hit 5 of 10 threes. He had 23 points. Damian Lillard, who I did not think played particularly well in this game, 22 points and 11 assists. Shaedon Sharpe, 13, all in the first half off the bench. Just a moment on Sharpe, he is so unfazed. He's hitting jumpers. He hit a couple pull-ups in this game, shooting off the dribble. Some 3-pointers, 2 3-pointers on broken plays, just cash. He's finding himself wide open, smooth looking stroke. Had a layup inside where he jumps, makes contact with someone in the air and shoots on the way down because he just stays up so long. I don't even think this was like a remarkable Shaedon Sharpe night, but every time he plays, he's really impressive and he was really fun. Jusuf Nurkic returned in this game. Justice Winslow did not play. Winslow and Keon Johnson did not play. Jusuf Nurkic returned and started, so the Blazers got back to the regular starting lineup. That starting lineup wasn't particularly good in each half. Just a pretty tough Jusuf Nurkic night. He finished with 9 points in 15 minutes, and the Blazers were outscored by 21 points in his 15 minutes on the court. It's a minus 21 in the game. The Blazers ended up winning by 7. Nurk was bad in this game. And his replacement, his backup, Drew Eubanks, is really good. More on him in a moment. On the Spurs side, 21 for Devin Vassell, a career-high 31 and 14 rebounds, career-high 31 points for Jakob Poeltl. He got whatever he wanted. He finished 14 of 17 from the floor, and 2 of his misses were point-blank bricks. He missed a shot at the rim, and then he missed it, just that he unguarded, missed another shot at the rim where Damian Lillard probably shoved him in the back. But hey, what are you going to do? They didn't call it, not a foul. Jakob Poeltl got whatever he wanted. He just they couldn't get him the ball down the stretch. We'll talk about that more in a moment. He was great. 20 points for Keldon Johnson. He was not very good down the stretch, but it was pretty good early, and the Spurs stayed in this game. I mentioned that neither team could stop either team. Heading into the fourth quarter, the Blazers were shooting 54% from the floor. The Spurs were shooting 55% from the floor. The Blazers were up. The Blazers had made 12 3-pointers and were 12 of 23. That's north of 50% for those of you scoring at home on threes. And they were only up 4. They just could not stop the Spurs, who were shooting 55%. They were shooting nearly 40% from 3. Portland's defense did not show up until the final 6 minutes, and that final 6-minute run, the last half of the quarter, was really spurred by Drew Eubanks. 3 minutes into the fourth quarter, Chauncey Billups yanks the bench. Nazir Little, Yusuf Nurkic, Shaedon Sharpe, get out of there. Let's put the closing lineup in there. The closing lineup tonight was Josh Hart, was Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, and Damian Lillard. And in the middle was Drew Eubanks. And with Eubanks on the floor, they played a little bit of zone. They switched a bunch and allowed Eubanks to guard on the perimeter. They were not afraid at all. Eubanks didn't have this monster night, right? Like it wasn't like Eubanks had this like crazy game. He finished with 9 points and 7 boards, and even in the fourth quarter he had 5 and 2 rebounds, and one of them was a fun tap out. But like he was just so impressive. So we're gonna go to our correspondent on impressive performances real quick. Shania, what did you think of that game?
That don't impress me much.
Okay, Shania's lying as classically lying. Drew Eubanks was really, really, really good. His energy changed this game. He had a bucket inside. The Blazers took the lead late on an and one from Drew, 107-106. Took the lead for good. Drew Eubanks gets the ball inside, triple pump fakes on Jakob Poeltl, goes up when Poeltl reaches his hand in the cookie jar. Eubanks goes up and through his hand, takes the foul, hits the bucket, and one, makes the free throw. The Blazers take the lead 107-106 for good. And this was the sequence of the game. Drew Eubanks hits an and one. He's screaming. He's flexing. I'm talking about the Shaq of Troutdale. A listener told me that he's the new nickname for Drew Eubanks is the Guardian of the Gorge, which is like too good of a nickname. Shaq of Troutdale is bad. I'm the guy who plays the Shania Twain drop. I like stupid stuff. Shaq of Troutdale puts the Blazers up 1. Spurs come down. They find Devin Vassell on the post on the right-hand side. He tries to just go right over the top of Damian Lillard, and Damian Lillard blocks him at his apex. So, like, met him at the top, met him at the summit, and blocked him. Ball's loose. Dame grabs it. Vassell falls on top of him. It's a foul. They're going to go the other way. Damian Lillard gets up, flexes, screams, yells at the crowd. He's hyped. This is as hyped as we've seen Dame all game. He just hasn't, but he didn't play with a lot of juice in those first 3 quarters. But Dame is hyped, comes down, hits a 3, Blazers up 4, helps seal this game. They did not look back, did not trail after Drew Eubanks' and one, but Eubanks' and one, his energy fuels what they're doing. Like, they're just like, okay, Drew's playing his butt off. He's really helping us defend. He's helping us get stops. He's getting stops, He's helping us get stops. He's scoring on the other end with and ones. Dame's into it. He makes a block. He's hyped up, and then he comes down and feeds off his own emotion and hits a 3. And all of a sudden, the Blazers are up 4, and they would not trail again in this game. The Spurs scored 2 points. 2 points. Count them. 2 points in the final 6 minutes and 50 seconds. 2 baskets. I'm yelling. The Blazers closed the game on a 17-4 run. They scored 4 points. And when you repeat something wrong a couple times, it really loses its emphasis. 4 points. They had 2 baskets in the final 6 minutes and 50 seconds. And one of them was a goaltend call that I just don't understand what the call was. Chauncey Billups already used this challenge. But, it just wasn't a goaltend from what I saw. It's just a straight up terrible call. But they missed it. So the Spurs saw the ball go in one time in the final 6 minutes and 50 seconds. The other one was a goaltend that was like a phantom goaltend. The Blazers ratcheted up their defense. Drew Eubanks' energy changed the game. He came into the game with 9 minutes and 9 seconds left when Chauncey Billups says, "This game's falling apart." It was tied at 98 at that point. "This game's falling apart. I need my dudes in there." Well, his dudes weren't great. They found themselves, even his preferred lineup over the next 2 minutes would find themselves down 6 on 2 separate occasions. Like they didn't have it going. Another stoppage, Drew Eubanks' energy and it changed the game. He was fantastic. He was so good. And it was just the way he played. Like so many times it's just like when you're in these games, you just need someone to kind of be a tone setter. Drew Eubanks was a tone setter. The Blazers brought it home. Josh Hart had a huge steal at the end of the game. Anthony Simon scored 7 points in those final 6 minutes and 50 seconds, nearly doubling up the Spurs on his own. This was a game where the Blazers did not play well until they did. And as stupid and simple as that is, like that was the difference in this game, is that they played great in those final 6 minutes. This was an ugly win. And I want to talk about in the second segment, the beauty in an ugly win. I think the Blazers didn't play well. And I think it is reason to celebrate them playing poorly and finding a way to pull this out with a convincing close to the game. Let's talk about the beauty and the ugliness in the second segment. But first, I want to tell you that this show is brought to you by Turo. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., the United Kingdom, Canada, and coming soon to Australia for all you listeners out there who love Josh Lloyd. You can book a spacious SUV or a minivan for a family trip, or get a classic or a luxury car for a special event, birthday, or a holiday. You can find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget, and you just need to get from A to B. Plus, you can even test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on, see how it fits your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget those boring rental cars. Find your drive at Turo.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Built Bar. It's the best tasting protein bar on the market. That's what they're doing. They're making delicious protein bars. Today, I had to leave my day job where I work in front of a computer and go to the arena to watch a Blazers basketball game that I was excited about. But because of kind of the transition between those two things, I wasn't going to have time to get the fuel I needed to get going. But luckily, I got a stash of cookies and cream, protein bars, Built Bars right in my desk at home. So what I do? Grabbed a Built Bar, 17 grams of protein, just 130 calories, and just 4 grams of sugar and 4 net carbs. I roll out the door. I eat that bad boy on my way to the arena, and by the time I'm standing there in Chauncey Billups' media availability, I am already feeling the effects of loading up on something that isn't just filled with sugar. Packs a punch. Macros you can use, baby. So why don't you go get yourself some? Go to Built.com and use a promo code LOCKEDON15. That's LOCKEDON15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right. Listen, the Blazers won an ugly basketball game. They couldn't stop the Spurs in this game. They couldn't stop the Spurs. Some of this is that they schematically had trouble when they weren't playing zone and they weren't switching everything, which is guarding pick and rolls with Jakob Poeltl. He was just slicing and dicing. Part of it was that they just didn't play with enough emotion and energy. There is a requisite effort to be good on defense. The Blazers didn't bring that, and they had some bad X's and O's stuff early in this game. The Spurs made it tough on them. The Spurs are bad, and they want to be bad. They're bad on purpose. But they lost by 37 last night against the Golden State Warriors in San Francisco. They come in here, second night of a back-to-back. The Blazers have had 2 nights off. Like, they have a rest advantage against a bad basketball team. Spurs are 6-8. They won a couple games early in the season, couple good games early in the season, but they've been struggling since then. And the Blazers are just getting carved up. 3 separate occasions, Jakob Poeltl drove from the top of the key past Yusuf Nurkic to the rim and scored on a right-handed layup. gets to his strong hand, never turns, easy layup, just like easy, sloppy stuff like that, right? Like they weren't playing well. Like I said, through 3 quarters, the Spurs were shooting 54% from the floor and 40% from 3. The Blazers could not keep them away from the rim, and the only reason they weren't losing after 3 quarters is because they'd made 3. They were +3 at the 3-point line, +9 overall at 3-point line. Like, they'd made 3 more 3-pointers. That was at that point, that was basically the difference in the game. A few more free throws and some more threes. Like, Portland they were winning this game because their offense was a little bit better. But that third quarter was a nightmare for the Blazers. They threw the ball all over the place. 8 turnovers. 8 turnovers in the third quarter alone. They had 6 at halftime and 14 assists. They had a single assist and 8 turnovers in that quarter. They just couldn't get anything going. Damian Lillard had 2 turnovers. Josh Hart had 2 turnovers. Jeremy Grant had 2 turnovers. Drew Eubanks had a turnover in which he threw a pass to Josh Hart that was 1 Josh Hart distance away from him. It was like 6.5 feet off the mark. Nazir Little had that 8th turnover where he was driving and was like, okay, I'll just pitch it behind me to someone. You know who was there? Was the referee. He threw it to the dang ref. The ball goes out of bounds. Johnson Billups said they gave away a couple souvenirs. One of Josh Hart's passes was from half court trying to be a hit-ahead pass. It was 17 feet in the air. Like, it just never came down and flew in several rows. I believe it plunked someone on the head in the second row, and the dude didn't react. If anyone got a cut of that, it was like incredible. They were just tossing the ball over the place. They were playing terrible, and yet they were still kind of winning because the Spurs couldn't stop them. They were not kind of winning. They were winning by 4 heading into the fourth quarter. I can be precise on that. They're winning heading into the fourth quarter just because the Spurs couldn't stop the Blazers on the other end. The Blazers just giving free possessions away, but if they don't give those possessions away, they're just in a shootout because the defense wasn't there. 3 minutes in the fourth quarter, the bench is in the game. This is just a bad Nurk night, but the bench is in the game with Nurk in there. And Chauncey Billups says, we're going to lose if we stay in this direction. Like, if I wait till the 7-minute mark, which is typically about how long he waits to bring Dame back, like, we're going to lose this game. Dame ended up playing 39 minutes, Jeremy Grant 37 minutes. Like, Chauncey Billups played his guys too many minutes because they were going to lose this game if they did not. For sure, they were going to boot this game away. And even then, like I mentioned, they get the guys back on the court, and then they turn the game in the final 6.5 minutes. That was 2 more minutes when the Portland gave up 6 more points, still couldn't get stops. Jakob Poeltl gets a tip in, they miss a layup, and nobody blocks him out because 2 guys went for the block, including Eubanks. Poeltl gets an easy tip in. They go up 6 with 6.5 minutes or 6 minutes and 50 seconds left. It's like, oh yeah, ball game. Like, the Blazers are going to lose. A couple things happened. One, the Blazers played a lot more zone in the final few minutes. Chauncey, I asked him after the game, and he seemed to indicate that they only played zone in the fourth quarter. And to my eyes, no, that is not true. They played a bunch of their what I believe is 55. The call is 55, which is switching man defense as opposed to 5 where they drop in coverage. 55 is where they straight up switch. The switching took away a lot of the Spurs driving lanes, kept them out of the paint. They'd been really good in the paint. Spurs closed this game 2 of 11 in the final 6.5 minutes and 0 of 6 from 3. Force them to take jumpers, keep them out of the paint, keep the pick and roll stuff, keep Jakob Poeltl out of there. Like, keep him away from the rim. It was an ugly game that they won in the final minutes. During the course of an NBA season, the best indicator for a good team is point differential. It doesn't always lead to best point differentials don't win the championship, see the Phoenix Suns last year. But typically the good teams, the teams that have a slice of championship equity are the teams with, the 4 or 5 best teams with the best point differential. Typically teams that run off and hide and win a championship because they're just better than everyone else, they did it during 82 games. It's a meritocracy. They roll teams during the regular season, and point differential matters. And I think over the course of a long season, the Blazers, playing close games against teams they should handle is probably a bad indicator for them winning the title. But taken on its own, this game, a Tuesday in November against a 6-8 Spurs team playing a bunch of young people and playing rookie Jeremy Sohan, who's a power forward as their backup point guard. An interesting player, but a team that is playing youth and trying stuff out and getting Isaiah Roby and Charles Bassey a whole bunch of minutes. A team committed to a youth movement. Winning this game in any way is significant and really important for the Trailblazers because you know what they need to do? They need to take care of business against bad teams. Taken holistically, blowing teams out is the best indicator of being good. But in this moment, in this game, like very specifically, taken as the smallest sliver of the pie chart as you can, this is a great win. A great win. Because they played like crap. They looked bad. And they looked like they were going to throw the game away in that third quarter, and they didn't. They looked like they were just going to give this game away and like, oh, hey, we just don't have it tonight. Damian Lillard doesn't hit a three-pointer until there's 3 minutes left in the third quarter. Dame struggled in this game, 2 of 9 and 8 of 20 from the floor, 2 of 9 from 3. Jeremy Grant, who was fantastic in the first 3 quarters, was kind of quiet in the fourth, and they win this game on the back of some Drew Eubanks hustle, Anthony Simons making shots when they needed to, and a couple big late plays from Damian Lillard. Winning, taking care of business against a bad team in November is a great win. There is beauty in how ugly this was because in bigger sample sizes, your net rating, your point differential, your net differential matters. In this moment, for 7 minutes, finding a way to win a game when you play poorly was the most important thing. This was a beautiful, ugly win for the Blazers. Perfectly encapsulated by Drew Eubanks, whose game isn't always pretty, but he brings it. Prior to the game, Chauncey Billups said, and I want to quote him here, he said, "He's got some nasty in him that I love." And that's what Drew Eubanks brought to this team in the final 7 minutes. They found a way to just be a little bit nasty and win a gross game. Props to them for finding a way to win a gross one. There is real reason to celebrate getting an ugly win. Just go get them. Don't apologize. You don't have to give them back. The Blazers found a way to do it. It's wonderful. Wonderful. And they wear their fun little PDX airport jerseys too while they did it. All right. To close the show, I want to talk about the 20-game mark. That is like the unofficial, official, okay, now the sample size is big enough to take teams seriously. The Blazers are 10-4 through 14 games. They've got 6 left, including a 4-game road trip ahead before they get to the 20-game mark. I want to look back at how they fared in the first 20 games in all of the Dame era and talk about why it matters and how they can get to the big numbers you want to be at. But before we do that, I want to tell you about BetOnline. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. No matter what that action is, you're going to find it at betonline.net. If you want to bet on the Blazers, you could down 6 with 6 minutes and 50 seconds left. You could have gone to BetOnline and live bet the Blazers to win. At the time, the odds were plus 250. You could have won some money saying they're going to come back and do this. You could have won some money on BetOnline. If you don't want to do that, you can bet on any other sports you're looking for. You're going to find all of it, plus news, analysis, podcasts, everything you need to know to be a smarter bettor. So go check it out. BetOnline, that's where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked on Blazers. Let's talk about the 20-game mark. Listener Tim, longtime listener Tim, longtime emailer Tim, if you want to ask me a question, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com is a good way to do it. Sometimes I use them for mailbag episodes, and sometimes I just use them for a whole segment on the show. Tim, that's what we're doing here. Tim was curious about the 20-game mark and how the Blazers have fared in past 20-game marks and how they can get to the what mark do they need to get to sort of indicate that this team is for real? That he didn't say that. I put those are my own quotes. So I looked back at the past 20-game marks during the Damian Lillard era, followed from the 2012 onward. They have had 4 seasons where they have finished 12-8 or better. In those seasons, 13-14, that's the 09.9 season. They beat the Houston Rockets and made the second round of the playoffs. 2014, they were 17-3 in the 13-14 season after 20 games. That team was very good. They finished 54-28. That was a very good basketball team. They made the second round of the playoffs. They lost to the Spurs, the eventual world champions, in 5 games. In 2014-15, the following year, also a very good basketball team. They were 16-4 after 20 games. They finished 51-31, and this team would have been better than that. I think this is the closest the Damian Lillard team has ever come to winning a championship. Sure, they lost in the first round to the Grizzlies. They didn't even get out of the first round of the playoffs. But this team, before Wesley Matthews tore his Achilles, was one of the teams that could win a title. They were championship level good. They were top 10 in offense, top 10 in defense. This was a championship level team with a starting lineup that made perfect sense, and had an injury in March that changed their season. Ended up probably changing the course and direction of the franchise because LaMarcus Aldridge left that summer. They were 16-4 after 20 games. 8-12, 10-10. And the next two seasons, when they were 8-12 and 15-16, and they made it to the second round. That was LaMarcus left, and they ended up winning 44 games, and then beating the Clippers in round one, making it to the second round of the playoffs, where they lost to the Golden State Warriors. The following season, 10-10, they squeaked into the 8th seed and were summarily swept out of the playoffs. They come back the following year, the 17-18 season. They go 12-8. In their first 20 games. They win 49 games that year. They get the 3rd seed in the Western Conference, and they got freaking booted out of the playoffs in 4 games by the Pelicans. But they were really good that year. Like that was a good basketball team. They just sucked in the playoffs, and they had a bad matchup, and they couldn't hang. And they probably should have blown it up that summer, but they didn't. They came back in the 18-19 season. They went 12-8 again. They won 53 games and made the Western Conference Finals. Since then, they've gone 8-12, 11-9, 10-10. When they have won at least 12 of their first 20 games, they've been good. That's 13-14, that team that could have won the championship. 14-15, a team that, 13-14, the team that made the second round. 14-15, a team that could have won a championship. 17-18, third in the West, just lost like dogs in the playoffs. And 12-8, made the Western Conference Finals. 18-19, 12-8, and they made the Western Conference Finals. During the Damian Lillard era, they have won at least 12 of their first 20 games on 4 separate occasions. All of those years, they have been legitimately a very good team. The 20-game mark isn't the end-all be-all, right? Like you can figure it out after the 20-game mark. But typically, in the Dame era, when they have been good, at least 12 of their first 20, winning for 12 of their first 20, they have been a team that is a force to be reckoned with. They are 10-4 right now. Let's look at their next 6 games. On Thursday, they play a Brooklyn Nets team that is out of sorts, certainly capable of winning. They have Kevin Durant, and they have some guys who can make 3-pointers every so often, but they got throttled by the Kings tonight. That's a winnable game. They play the Utah Jazz after that at home. They play every other game. They play every other day until for basically 2 weeks. They play on Thursday. They play the Brooklyn Nets. Then on Saturday, they play the Utah Jazz at home, wrap up a homestand. Both of those are winnable games. Then they go on the road at Milwaukee, at Cleveland, at New York. That's the Friday after Thanksgiving. And then that's the Knicks. And then at Brooklyn the following Sunday. 4-game road trip. Let's say that if 12-8 is the magic number they need to get to, they need to go 2-4 over their next 6 games. I think they're going to do better than that. I think both of the home games are imminently winnable. The Jazz have been really good this year. They lost tonight at home, but they've been really good this year. They have, they don't have a ton of top end talent, but they have like 10 quality NBA players. They win games with depth. Totally a beatable team though. Totally a beatable team. The Blazers absolutely are capable of being better than the Jazz. Blazers probably just are straight up better than the Brooklyn Nets. You take care of your 2 home games. You will be 12-4 through 16. Then you got to even if you win 1, you're looking at one of the 3 best starts in the last decade over the first 20 games. That's it. They go 3-3. It's one of their best starts in the Dame era. It will be a top 3 start in the Dame era. They don't have a chance to go 17-3. They're not going to touch that 13-14 team that won 54 games, but I think 16-4 is pretty unlikely, but certainly 15-5 is within the realm. Like 14-6, totally doable. A 14-6 start is really good. That is the sign of a really good team. The reason why 20 is the cutoff is because it's typically the sign of a really good basketball team. At Milwaukee seems like a really tough game to win, depending on Milwaukee's health. They've had a bunch of guys out, and when they've had guys out, they haven't been nearly as good. But at Milwaukee, you assume that they're relatively healthy and Giannis plays. They're going to be tough to deal with. At Cleveland, they were bad on the road, but they've been really good at home. Cavs are for real. I think they're a very good basketball team. Those are two really tough games. At the Knicks and at Brooklyn are two winnable games. You split on the road, any flavor of a split on the road, you're 16-4. If you assume you win your two home games, you are right there. You really have an opportunity. 14-6, not 16-4. You're 14-6, or 13-7 if they split the home games too. If they just straight up split them, 13-7, a great start. If they win the two home games and then split on the road, they're looking at 14-6. Or excuse me, 14-6. I'm having trouble with numbers late in the podcast, y'all. 13-7 or 14-6 are the two numbers I have. I have them written down on my sheet. I keep looking at them and reading them wrong. I think what this means is this team is for real. I've said it a bunch on this podcast, but the 20-game mark is kind of the official, okay, the sample size is big enough. I've been ready to call it for a week. This team is for real. And if they're set up to be in a really good spot against, Brooklyn and Utah in winnable games, if they can win those games in New York and find a way to steal one, they found ways to steal one. All year long, they've gone into games where I'm like, this is probably a loss. They've been good, but it's probably a loss. They haven't had one of those. They sit atop the Western Conference. I sat here on this podcast where I recorded yesterday with Jason Quick, and I said, Blaze just haven't had a stinker yet. They just haven't had a stinker. I thought tonight against San Antonio was a stinker. You know what they did? The final 7 minutes, they found a way to win. This is what this team does. They are resilient and gritty, just good enough on defense to always find themselves in games. They've got enough shooting from when they have their top lineup in there because Jeremy Grant's been so freaking good. They can win any game. 14-6 is on the table. 15-5 is maybe on the table if they really run one off. But this team can go 4-2 over their next 6 games. I have no doubt about it. If they don't, even if they split them and end up at 13-7, that's a great start. And over the last 10 years, with Damian Lillard on the roster, when they have won at least 12 of their first 20, they have been a real deal Holyfield home court advantage team in the playoffs. What more could you want from this team? If at the beginning of the year I told you they're going to have home court advantage in the playoffs and they'll have a chance to, host a playoff series in the super duper crowded West, you would immediately take it. They put themselves in a great position. You win ugly, you put yourselves in a great position. They got some more work to do, and they're totally capable of doing it. Thanks for listening to the show. Tell your friends about it. That's the best way to spread the word about the show. Say, hey, I like listening to Locked On Blazers. It's available on all podcast platforms or also on YouTube. I think you'll like it too. Tell a friend, make it your first listen every single day. Come back for more. How about you make your second listen Locked On Sports Today, the 22-minute program covering the major sport stories across all of the biggest leagues in North America. So check it out. It's also available on all platforms and YouTube as well. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.